of formulating.
Good. On Facebook or
On this chat, but I'll do it directly to
oh,
you, so you'll be able to grab it and it won't be visible to anybody else.
okay.
So
Good. On Facebook?
I'm going to share an image with you, Cathy, that you might get a kick out of.
Okay. That was beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
And into the next one. Okay, The Walk. Oh, I can't wait to listen to this. It's really nice. This is my old friend, Brad Hatfield. I have to watch that I don't say Mike Hatfield.
Believe me, I'm going to be plugging him enough, so he'll get some love from me if he doesn't get it from you.
I think he's watching probably. So, gosh, Brad Hatfield and I met in college. And how old are you?
Oh crap! I got to think about that. Oh, Medicare, 65.
You're 65. I'm
Yeah.
68. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to get this sense of where we were when we were in college. You must have just entered college, and I had been hanging out a little bit or something.
Yeah, I got there in 74. My brother was there a year earlier.
Okay, yeah, because I was there 72 to 75. And Brad's brother, Mike, played vibes at the time, and we had, I should have gotten that picture together. We had a band called Timbre, and which was vibes, guitar, bass, drums, and me. We played, I always talk about what a mishmash of music was going on at that time,
It was great.
It was wonderful in Boston. And so we actually played a mishmash, really like we're and I remember Mike always saying, I just don't feel funky enough on the vibes.
Yeah. Always a challenge. And then clubs, at the time too, is like, what is that thing that you're bringing in here?
Yeah, right. I know. No bands really had vibes. That's so true. But anyway, we were hanging out a lot in college. We were really connected and intertwined. And you guys, I don't know if you remember this, you guys even somehow magically rented the house that was a house that I used to hang out in high school. My musician friends rented that house.
It was the home of the stars. That's what we called it. So apparently it had a history that we didn't even know. There was a lot of stardom that was there before we even got there.
Yeah, that kind of blew my mind. So I always remembered that. Anyway, Brad is really a wonderful piano player. And the proof of the pudding is not just me saying that, but a lot of other people. And he's been very successful still. Oh, actually, you're not living in Boston. That kind of blew my mind. I thought you were still in Boston.
Yeah, we pulled the plug up there just about a year ago. After, the majority of my time, after leaving Ohio, which is where we're from, I got there to go to school and, was there and then was on the road a little bit, and lived in Los Angeles a little bit, lived in Switzerland a little bit, but New England was mainly the place. Yeah. We pulled the plug when COVID hit. I was going to be commuting from here to Berklee College of Music, where I still did a little classroom teaching. And
wait, you said from here? Did you mean
from Florida?
Okay, so you were already in Florida. Okay.
Yeah. We had a place down here. We've always had places down here, and so we just try to escape that weather as much as possible. And so what happened was once the college shut down, I was teaching remotely, and I was very comfortable with that because of all the other online teaching I do for Berklee online, which is different than the college. And we just decided, hey, we don't need that other place up there, even though we love it. It was a beautiful house on a lake, and it was awesome. But, I can jump in the pool here pretty much any day of the week. So that wins.
Okay. So what part of Florida are you in?
It's Vero Beach, and it's about an hour 15 or hour and a half north of West Palm Beach, which is one of the airports you'd fly into. And we're about 15 minutes inland, so 15 minutes from the beach. But it's a huge adjustment, obviously. New England and Boston in particular, with my relationships with the college and the whole jazz scene there, the Boston Pops, and all kinds of other things that have kept me tethered there, because you really had to show up if you're playing a gig. You had to be there, right? And that's what kept us there. Gay, my wife, also Berklee professor for 27 years, teaching there. She's a composer, flutist, vocalist, arranger. She's also on the team of The Young and the Restless, the show that we both are on the composing team for. And her family's from there, so for her, she's from Scituate, pulling up and coming down here was like a really big change. But, we're in such a virtual world now, and it's not that bad of a flight to get back up north when we need to.
Your kids are a bit older. Are they living with you or not?
No. When? No. Now, if my daughter is watching this, No, they're both doing great. My son Paul, our son Paul, is in the Los Angeles area. He works for Respawn, which is a huge video game company. They just put out a Star Wars game, and he's a game producer, and had a lot to do with working with folks with the music as well as other parts of it. And since the Star Wars has that whole franchise there was a lot of detail going back and forth getting approvals for the usages of these themes and everything else. So he's dug in. He went out to LA as soon as he graduated from Berkeley. He went out there and just banged it out, and now he's in a nice management position and doing well. So he's down there. Our daughter Lee stuck around in New England. She went to Northeastern University and stuck around and was working a few different, like most of us, the juggle. But when COVID hit, she moved to Portland, Oregon. And she continued to work remotely for the job that she had in Boston-based gig. But now she's been hired by a company out there that does a lot of marketing and branding for a lot of outdoor lifestyle brands and so forth. So she's loving Portland. I mean, this, when you're 26 years old, this is like not bad, So, we're looking forward to visiting her out there. But both of them, Paul went to Berkeley, so he had to go through that conservatory thing. So he had to, guitar was his main thing. But he certainly embraced the production side of things. But he saw how hard Gay and I work to make a living doing this, and I think he said, "Well, I prefer a slightly different way." Plus, he loved the whole concept of the video game construction thing and production. It was something that got him fired up. So he's doing what he wants to do, which is pretty. That's all any of us could ask, right?
Yeah.
And Lee also very much. Into music as well. She worked for Boston Calling, which is a big festival that happens in Boston, and of course they got shut down these last 2 years because of COVID. But she's an avid listener, and she makes me hip. See, as being a teacher at this age, it's like I got to have these youngsters around to keep me hip, But she's turned me on to some great music, as well as my son as well. I mean, having those influences around is really great. Yeah. But she didn't pursue the music route, although I did have her as a student in a large lecture at Northeastern, and we tried to keep it on the down low, but it eventually got out. But I wasn't, that was somewhat uncomfortable. And by the way, Gay had Paul in one of her ear training classes.
Oh my God! So
yeah, that's challenging for any of you folks out there that are teachers. If you get into that situation where your child attends your institution, just get ready for that.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, I can really see how games would stimulate the creative bug, because it's things, so many possibilities, and how technology how technology works, just the actual workings of it, I think are pretty interesting too,
Yeah.
There's a lot of different creative flows and actions,
Right. I mean, a big part of this blending of progress, this exponential technological development with old school emotions of music or spoken word and visuals and all the things that we do to combine these things in really interesting ways, and weave it into a story told with all these different elements coming at us. It's really amazing in video games because it's not cameras with actors, although on the things that they release, sometimes they do have live folks in there, but the AI stuff and all the things that they do now make things look so realistic. But the whole point being all these different elements coming together to engage us, and sometimes it's just like I just want to not have to think anymore and let this thing sort of wash over me, or it's the interactive thing of playing a game and being actually dictating what the story is, because you control that. I mean, this stuff just we used to just control the story in our dreams or daydreaming, looking up at the clouds, right? So now we have things that you can push and change the story. So it's it's ever evolving. The technology makes things better. It also it's an incredibly challenging area, and one of the things that Paul, as a managing person in that environment, is he really has that anti-burnout goal, because when he went out to LA initially, he was doing a lot of, Q&A stuff, quality and assurance, or whatever you call it, quality control, QC, whatever you call it. And it's just labor intensive, and it's mind numbing. And when somebody's going to release something, all of a sudden it's like everybody work really, really hard, and people get burnt out, and it's not healthy. So this is the same, whatever it is that we do, but we do need some air occasionally. And so that's the thing. I mean, because the technology's there, the possibilities are there. You want to reach out and grab all these things. But you do have to assemble it. And, as I say to my students, two things are bound to fail: people and technology, and usually at the same time. Anybody that does a Zoom knows that. So that's it. You got to troubleshoot and what have you. But he's happy in that element. It's creative, but it's also it's a bit of a lifestyle thing, decision,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Um, I guess as long as we're talking about family, we could talk about your
yeah.
brother.
Yeah. Well, there's always lots to say. We just had a great time out in Sedona, Arizona. We have family reunions. Generally, it's every 2 years. My mom is 99 right now. She's doing great. So she was on the
Wow.
trip. Yeah, she's rocking it. And her older sister, I think, is 106 now.
What?
So yeah, I know. It's my wife is very worried about the gene pool. I thought I might be done with you, but anyway, we'll see if it holds over to the men. I don't know. It's
Wow.
tough to say. But anyway, we had a great gathering, so we were just hanging out, and he was like, I don't know if you can share that JPEG I sent to you, but they might get a kick out of it.
The family
Of
band?
the family band. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm downloading it, so
yeah, sure. It should come
it'll
right
take a
now.
minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, I had three older sisters, and my brother's 2 years older than me, and my sisters were nice, law-abiding, just get the great grades and behave. And then my brother came along.
I like that law. My sisters too, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Law abiding. That's very
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. So the good news for me as the younger brother is that my brother came in and said, "Hey, now check this out. Number one, I'm going to learn how to play drums," which is like really freaking
Wait,
loud.
now who's who?
All right. So on the as we look at the screen on the far right with the French horn, that's my sister Becky. She's my middle older sister, and that's me at the piano. And then my oldest sister Cindy on the violin, and the next one down is Polly. I might have gotten Becky's the youngest older sister. So it's Cindy, Polly on the flute, Becky on the French horn, and my brother on the drums, and me on the piano, and
Oh
an old
gosh.
man with a shotgun in the picture on the wall. And it's like when you were practicing, it's almost like you would. It's like get the scale correct, or this thing comes to life and blasts a hole in your very fancy shirt. So.
And what was on the piano? I mean, on the board in front of you. What is that?
That looks
It's a
like a very simple play, big block notes, because there's illustrations in the book that I must have been reading from. So it must have been a
yeah.
very simple sort of nursery rhyme kind of tune or whatever. I'm guessing. The kid
It almost
quite
looks like the
recall.
Little Prince.
Yeah, could be. So there's Michael on the drums, and he broke the mold of what was happening in the household. We lost our dad at a really early age. I was just 6 when
Oh,
my dad passed, and so my mom if you can imagine this, raising three teenage daughters in the '60s.
yeah.
So and then we came along, but the one thing was the music was the unifying, factor here. It was like that sort of place that you could go and be reassured.
Hmm.
So the way it operated in our house with my mother running the show is that everybody played piano when you could start doing it. Boys a little bit later, but second, third grade, something like that. And then in seventh grade, you would be assigned another instrument to play, and she would just tell you what you were going to play, and you probably agree with it. And so there it went. And then my brother chose the drums. And then when it got to me, she said, "Well, I like that big bass. Why don't you play bass?" So, all right, sounds cool. And, because by then, the rocks, my brother was down in the basement playing Hendrix tunes and, all not Ed Gwynn, Johnny Winter stuff
Yeah.
and, Creedence Clearwater and all that stuff. So, bass was like, okay, I'll play string bass, but eventually maybe I'll get an electric. But he kind of paved the way for us moving into this pop-ish world, and then I got hooked up with a piano teacher that taught jazz in Columbus, Ohio, Dave Wheeler, which any of us that studied with him, we owe him an awful lot because, I was arranging for a little big band when I was like 14 years old.
Oh,
I would not care to share any of those things with you, and I have lots of stories of failed transpositions with tenor saxophones that introduced some unique tonal qualities to the arrangement. Sometimes I was complimented for that. "Oh, he's so forward thinking with that dissonance." Well, that's because I transposed an octave and a half a step instead of an octave and a step. That puts a little buzz in the voicings. But Michael had the bands happening. He started playing the shows and whatever. So that really kind of got us into being performers at a really young age and actually getting paid and going out and playing gigs or doing even hotel gigs. And when we were teenagers. So that's what kind of drove the decision to keep going with music. And I do have to share this one story because it really affected the rest of my life. My sister, the French horn player, she is a career French horn player, and that's what she did her entire life. She just recently retired from the Rockford Symphony outside of Chicago. But she was at Indiana University, which had an incredible school at the time. I think Peter Erskine had just maybe left there. I saw, maybe it was at Alan Pasqua. I hope I'm getting the right one. I saw his senior recital. But David Baker, very, well-known educator and band leader, trombone player, was, I was sitting in the room listening to that band. The Brecker brothers had been out there, so there was like a whole history of really cool jazz stuff happening. And so I was going to go there, but I was going to go there as a bass player because, they needed bass players. My sister said that. So Michael was already there as a vibes player. And the story that was the life-changing thing. And folks, this is like, I mean, anything can happen, right, in your life. But if you don't get out there and do stuff and live it, less happens, But more happens if you get out there, right? So my brother and a couple of his buds that were, vibraphone, players that studied at Indiana University went to a workshop that Gary Burton was holding. And if I'm hoping I'm getting this right, I think it was outside of Chicago somewhere. So it was a bit of a hack, but they had a car. So they drove and they were there for the weekend, I believe. But on Sunday night, after doing the workshop and really digging it and coming back, psyched to go back with all this new information, my brother goes, "Well, when are we going to leave? Because I got a class Monday." And the other guys go, "Well, we don't, so we're going to stick around." So this is, whatever it was, 1972, you go out and you stick your thumb out. So he's hitchhiking all the way back to Indiana, Bloomington, Indiana, and he's not getting very far. Now it's starting to get dark, and it's like, oh crap, what's going to happen here? And this big Travelall, kind of suburban style truck drives by, and then it pulls over and backs up. And my brother goes running up. He's so psyched. Somebody's going to give him a ride, and he opens up the door and he says, "Gary Burton." Michael,
Get out of here.
Yeah. So Gary Burton picks him up by the side of the road. And it turns out at that time he was living outside of Bloomington, Indiana, literally drove my brother to the dorm and, of course, said, I'm going to be criticized for this imitation. "Michael, if you want to study vibes, come to Berkeley and study with me." So that's what he did. So he changed my game plan. I was going to go to Indiana University. And so my brother was there for that 1 year.
That's
And then
crazy.
he went to Berkeley, and I ended up going to Berkeley as well. I will share this sort of postscript. Then we can back up to the other stuff. But years later, I ended up playing a couple of gigs with Gary. He had some road gigs with Eddie Daniels. They were doing this Benny Rides Again album. And so I had to go, down to Berkeley and rehearse with Gary, and which, he was very loose, but he just, was just all over it. And we went out, I can't remember where they were, somewhere in Nevada. We did a couple of concerts. And after it, we're flying home, and Gary was all over the technology, and I think he had a portable printer that he could hook up to his laptop and print out checks, on the plane on the way back.
High tech,
yeah, super high tech. But by the way, he played his tail off. I mean, he was holding back in the rehearsals, but when it was showtime, it was like you're just sitting there, like you almost forget to play because what's coming out of this dude is like, okay, history of jazz. Yeah. Oh, you want me to solo now? Holy crap! There's certain people you don't play after. Jerry Bergonzi, Pat Metheny. There's just people that you just say, "Nah, I'm good. So anyway, on the plane ride back, and he hands me the check, and we're all wrapped up. And I said, Gary, I've got this whole life in Boston, with the Pops, and I'm married, kids, and got this whole career. And I said, it's really because of you. And he goes, I know. So it's just. It's crazy,
cool.
What happens.
It is crazy.
So my brother has had a, huge influence, on what happened next.
He was great. I mean, I have nothing, and I've seen him, since, but I had nothing but great memories of him, and just fun. Him and Jill Romanow,
Yeah, I loved her.
And just. He was always, his energy was really good.
Yes.
It was positive and upward, and it was always kind of forward energy. It was never a drag.
No, this dude does not shut down, and it's great. And he's just really, he really cares about a lot of people and trying to help, So. Now I'm getting verklempt.
I saw him in up the coast. I was gigging with a piano player, Martin Mann, and this guy comes up to me and says, "Hi." And he's looking at me just like, and I'm like, he looks familiar. I don't know who the hell it is. And of course, it's your brother.
Yeah.
And I flipped out. I was like, oh my God, because it had been a long time.
Yeah. Well, he's changed his look quite a bit, and it's a lot of fun. And I know that those pictures of that band do exist because he'll post those things every once in a while. But,
Yeah, there was this one picture that I have, and I post occasionally. Not the PR picture, which I have too, but this picture in, I forget the name of the town, Leninton, something with an L.
Yeah.
Leominster.
Oh, Leominster, sure.
We were apparently in a hotel on a gig.
Yeah.
And staying there. And this one picture, I was a wild woman too, but it was part of the band Wild Woman, but anyway, I was lying across the bed in my long dress with my arm like this. I had hairy armpits.
Nice.
And the band was all standing around me, grinning in their paisley shirts, in their underwear.
Perfect. That would fly so well now.
Who took the picture?
Right. It wasn't a selfie.
I don't know. Yeah, no, it wasn't a selfie. So I have to interrupt because I have to say hi from a few people.
Yeah.
First of all, Chris Adams is here, and she's in Perugia.
Perugia.
Yeah. Perugia.
Oh, beautiful. Hey, Chris. When we love Perugia, I worked there many times with George Russell, and Berkeley has a huge presence there, and it's just an incredibly magical place. And the jazz scene there is just great when that festival is happening. So lots of great memories there, for sure. But I'm glad you're here, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, you're so cute. You have to be on here too. And yeah, I always wanted to go there. I always looked at that and I thought, wow, I want to do that.
You got
And
it. You
then
got to do it.
this old friend of mine who lives in the UK, he's English, Robin Blakeman, but he went to Berkeley and he said Mike was his first vibes teacher.
Oh my God. Yeah. That was back in the days that didn't even graduate from Berkeley, but if you were good, you would get hired as a teacher and then you would teach everything. And it was about $6 an hour. And that might be generous. It was insane. It was insane what those teachers were expected to do, but things were a lot looser then.
Yeah.
Now people are paid quite well, but you got to measure up, and so it's a little bit different atmosphere there. So,
Oh, there's a
but
lot
good
more
for him.
people going. I mean, when I was there, I don't know how many people were going, but I was one of, you know, the women there may have been 20% of the
Oh,
people, and it was mostly guitar players. And we had the building on Marlborough. That
mm-hmm.
was how long ago it was. It was
Yeah,
at the end of the Marlborough building, which was a great building, because it was one of those old, um,
yeah,
whatever they're called,
yeah,
brownstones. Yeah.
brownstones. Yeah, hmm.
As a matter of fact, yeah, during my tenure at Berkeley, The Exorcist came out, and I remember I was waiting for my flute lesson, and on a corner, it might have been in one of those brownstones. I'm not sure. Anyway, I was waiting on a corner, and you couldn't see who was coming on both directions. I was so weirded out by that movie, and I just remember waiting there, and I didn't sleep alone for 2 weeks. Actually, I had to sleep with friends.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I'm right there with you, Kathy. I saw that at Exorcist. I drove from Boston back to Columbus, Ohio through Cleveland. There was a music store up there that we always went to get gear. So I was going to shop there the next day. So I stopped in Cleveland and I stayed there. And of course, I think I was 18
Yeah, something
years
like
old.
that, right?
And Exorcist came out, and I went to a midnight showing of that. And then I went back to the hotel room, and I swear to God, I thought somebody had put quarters in that vibrating thing because I was just shaking so much. And then something fell over in the bathroom, and I was the same as you. For weeks, I was a mess, because it was the fear of the unknown. Is the cat possessed? Am I going to get possessed?
And I think because it was a more simple life at that
Yeah,
moment,
yeah,
with less availability of unbelievable movies and
yeah,
on in the internet and such.
yeah,
We were kind of naive. It's
yeah,
like,
sure.
ugh. Okay, and who else? Jim Kaiser.
Hey Jim. All right. So one of our bandmates from Columbus, Ohio, and his brother Gary was a guitar player, and so we see Jim every once in a while. He's way up the food chain in the audio world, so we love Jim.
Yeah,
Hey.
he said Van's Music, Dave Wheeler.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
My friend Dan Davila has listed your the link to All Music, which has
Okay.
your credits. And Cecily Gardner, I don't know if you know her name. She's a very dear friend of mine,
Okay.
and we have we have a seven-piece a cappella vocal improv group called
Oh,
Fish to
cool.
Birds. And anyway, she lived in San Francisco, and she worked with Mike
Yeah.
for years, actually, in San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Yeah.
Louise Alexandra Koopman.
Yes. Yeah. We played together. She was a student of Rebecca's, and so there's a lot of shared experiences there. Lovely, talented, and hardworking.
And
Which
she's
in
in and
yeah,
she's in Utrecht. Utrecht?
yeah. I'm going to get this wrong. She's going to have to tell me.
Oh, like where it is?
Yeah. Well, I'm in. I want to say Dutch, but I know that that's not correct. So she's going to be upset with me.
Okay, Louise, just mention
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
Utrecht is. Utrecht. It sounds, I don't know what it sounds like, German or
It
maybe
almost sounds like Swiss German. Like, are you in Swiss Germany? I mean, the German part of
well,
Switzerland.
Robin. Oh yeah, there. The Netherlands.
Netherlands.
Yeah.
All right. I was okay.
So Dutch, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all right. You've done well.
Yeah.
I know, man.
I'm on one of those NPR, game shows, So,
So, I'd love to play a little music.
yeah.
I know we discussed it. Should we try and play little bits and pieces, or should we just play? I don't know. What do you want to
Well,
do?
yeah. Well, what I would like to do is, do I actually have the ability to share my screen? Because,
Yes,
I
you
won't
do.
trigger anything here.
You're fine.
But I can at least share now. I guess you need to paste these links because since we're on Zoom and they're on Facebook, I guess is that the deal? So they would need the
Well,
links.
actually, anything you can do anything from your computer and share
Okay.
it
Okay.
if
All
you
right.
want, or
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
give it to me.
But you don't need to repaste it or
No,
anything.
I don't. I
Okay,
don't.
okay. All right, so hang on a second then. Let me give you the story behind the story, folks, because this is like one of those situations. Kathy and I were talking before we went live here about the adjustments that the musicians and folks in all parts of the music industry had to make adjustments, and how you kind of have to keep going if if the career is important to you to maintain in terms of making a living. And I write for both my wife and I, and some incredibly talented folks all write for The Young and the Restless, which is a daytime.
Which is something that I want to ask you about. How
Yeah,
did you and your wife get into that? But
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll backtrack and give that to you.
Okay.
Here's the link to the YouTube clip. So for those of you that want that, and then I'm just going to share the Google Chrome thing, and I won't play it from here. What I'll probably do is just obscure the visual because I'm thinking that maybe that might be what causes trouble for us because we own all the rights to the music. But this scene, and I'll roll just a tad here. This is a big send off to a character that was on the show, and he died in real life 2 years ago. So this is 2 years after that point in time, and they're doing sort of an honoring of this character. And one of the things about the character is that he loved jazz, and he loved especially like the Blue Note jazz. So you look at this artwork here, and you'll see it's sort of done like a Blue Note jazz label cover, right? And that was done on purpose because they were trying to honor his memory in a way that he wanted to be honored. So I'm going to cut to the quick, and then I guess I'll back up and give you a little more context. But the challenge of this whole episode was to have it really capture that sound and have it run throughout the episode and use it in ways that it's not just like, oh, sad, he's gone, but to have some joyfulness to the music as well. But here's our world. That when you write music for film and TV, there's these darn actors talking. So, that's why my mother said, I couldn't hear your music. Those people were talking. It's like, yeah, that's dialogue, mother. They got to talk. So your music has to be written in a way and produced in a way that it puts up with dialogue, should that dialogue take place. But if there's no dialogue and then the music comes forward, that there's some real craft and hopefully a good dose of art in there as well. So it holds up on these two levels, which is it's really challenging to do. And for the folks that I work with, that when I'm representing their music, it's usually a lot of back and forth. This is an unusual usage here in that this was ending the episode. This is a chance where the music goes full center. Yes, there are visuals, but nobody's saying anything. We're also wrapping up this whole memorial, so the tune has to be, well, number one, in the style. They had asked about having something that sounded like either a Nina Simone or Billie Holiday or Dinah Washington kind of thing. So those were the names that were being batted around because we did want to keep it sort of vintage sounding. But lyrically, it needed to have hope, but it also needed to honor, like, hey, life is fleeting. So, grab it. So once I got all the information from the music supervisors about where we were headed with this, my wife wrote a tune, instrumental tune. Then we sent that to a collaborator of ours, Jeff Megan, who's an incredibly talented writer and lyricist. And I said, this tune, uh, ah, Here's to Life, Shirley Horn was one of the performers of that. Those lyrics sort of embody where we needed to go. So with not going there and just stealing it, we're
Yeah.
taking the concept of that and the joys and the ups and downs, but you keep muddling through.
Yeah.
So Jeff just did a fantastic job of getting that happening. And then we I had to put it together, right? So between the three of us, I'm assembling the thing, and then I had to find a vocalist that would have the right sensibility for this. And as you're going to hear in a second, because I'm actually going to, maybe I can, I guess I
Yeah.
could just play. I could just play it here without the picture. I think that's the best way since I've already got control here.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is
Maybe stop
I'll
sharing your
yeah,
screen.
yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen, but you'll hear the audio going on. But just so you see, people are stepping up and putting roses down, and folks are, coming in for some hugs and what have you. So you folks have the link and you can watch it. It is on YouTube. But this is, how the episode ends. So those are some quick visuals there. So now what I'll do is I'm just going to play the music, and I think we'll play the whole thing.
Okay.
And the the vocalist that we got for this, one of her specialties is doing this kind of old school sound. Now she can do a million different things, but one of her strengths is being able to kind of get into that zone without without kind of I don't know, turning into a character, of the sound. And this is always such a, you know, uh, tough thing to do. And you, Cathy, as a vocalist, and I'm sure there's other vocalists watching. I mean, Chris, and so when you get directions that say, well, you can't really just do you. You kind of have to do what these people need and what fits within our framework. So I had worked with Lydia Harrell, actually with the Pops many years ago. I orchestrated a piece for her that she was in this Pop Search contest, and she was just such a pro. And she's done other things with Keith Lockhart, who's the conductor in the Pops since then. And I've just been watching her and listening to her, and I said, this is the person that is going to nail this. So I'm just going to play it, and you can tell me if you think she nailed it. And this is, I think she did. And it kills me every time. I might have to turn my camera off if I start getting verklempt again here. So let me go back here and make sure I'm at the top of the clip. So we'll hear the end of the dialogue here.
Neil was a good man.
And you're hearing that okay?
Yeah.
One of the few men I trusted.
I've seen the sun rise, then watched it fall. Been under clouds that never part at all. I've had a love and lost a time or two, and I'm grateful for it all. Decisions made, I might regret a few. I've learned you can't feel joy without sadness too. I've had dreams doesn't change. There's always love somewhere waiting for you. I've known friendship that never failed, felt the pain that comes with betrayal. But I can't deny I live life well, and I'm grateful for it all.
Beautiful. Very much like Here's to Life. And yeah, but its own song. It's really beautiful.
So that was.
In fact, I want a copy of it. It really,
it's available now. Well, it went nuts when this episode aired. I had to work really hard. Boy, I don't know. This is such a huge topic. But all right, so here's the musician, Brad Hatfield, 1960, when I'm 65 versus when I was, 20. I just wanted to play with Miles Davis, right? One of our friends, Mike Stern, got the gig. But it's just so interesting how you have to adjust and, keep adding to your craft and build your network of folks that help you succeed. And as they've generally helped, you get along, right?
Yeah.
So what was cool about this particular episode is, number one, Gay and I've been writing for the show, and I guess I'll back up to that and after we just sort of talk about this specific thing. They know that we're jazzers. I mean, we do a lot of other stuff for the show, but they know we can do this, and with more sophisticated harmonies and performance and everything else. There's a generation that maybe doesn't do that so much, or at least is not interested in doing that with media, especially maybe a soap opera, which they like. I don't get it. Why are you doing that? Well, I am making some money. I'm keeping people working, and I'm enjoying the music that we're making. But we are making it work for the show, which is like never lose sight of we're working for somebody else's vision. Yeah. And so we have to take their vision and we have to deliver. Just, that's the part of the gig. So I assembled this thing. Jeff did a reference vocal in his key. I kind of guesstimated what Lydia's range was because I know her voice well enough that I said, yeah.
Great.
Oh, yeah. She
sings great.
She's a killer. She recorded that herself in her closet in JP, Jamaica Plain in Boston. Just nailed it,
Yeah.
We actually have a couple different versions. This one was the more sort of affected, a little bit more Billie Holiday-ish thing. She does one that's a little bit more natural to her as well. Mm-hmm. We actually have both of those versions that are out there.
There's a Carmen McRae thing going on, too.
That's right.
But it's just a natural,
Oh, man. And just...
Yeah. Beautiful.
Daddy did not have to auto-tune. She was just right on it. And when I wanted a couple of lyric changes, and we had a little addition that we needed to add in, and she very quickly took those files in and gave us those fixes and gave it back to me in an amount of time that I needed to get stuff out. So Christine Fossen is a trumpet player, and I might play a little bit of a scene where she's featured in the same episode. She's out in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and great player. She didn't feel comfortable recording herself, so that's cool. Get into a studio.
Yeah.
None of her normal studios were available for this quick turnaround. She got into one, and it was kind of a disaster. And I'm producing remotely, right? So I'm on a Zoom call watching this go back and forth, and I'm just feeling this poor thing, because when I'm producing stuff in a studio, I want people, number one, well-fed and cared for. I want them to have everything that they need, and that means, great monitoring and great communication. So you can just let your thing go. Don't be held up by all these other things. So the first round was kind of disastrous. I got maybe 2 out of the 6 tunes that I needed from her. Oh. And they were, I had to do a lot of pasting together, and it wasn't because of her. It was because of, the way that it was recorded. So at the very last minute, she found another studio, which pushed me right up to the edge in terms of me delivering this episode. And this is a song that's synced to, I mean, an actor's playing along with it. It's like, this has to be done so they can shoot this thing, you know? But she got into a better place and we had much better communication. Another vocalist that I used was a former student of mine, Tavana Miller, and she sings on a song that I wrote called I Am Love, and that was supposed to be the more Nina Simone-ish tune. And her laptop was not working because she's a pro, and you know, but it just wasn't something she could do on her own. So she went into a studio in Brooklyn, and it was awesome. Same thing, Zoom call. So I've got connection not only with the engineer in the booth, and I'm sitting on a chair in as a laptop, but I have talk back with Tavana. You know, very easy, and he's streaming this using this tool, which I'm not using right now, but it's called Audio Mover, and it sends out studio quality stereo sound to your browser. So I just have to click on a link that they send. So. Dude and dudettes, all I can say is no parking problems in Brooklyn, no commute. I'm producing from, well, just over here. And she was, of course, just completely prepared, just like, Lydia. Just the two of them were just awesome. So they delivered great tracks. So there was them, a drummer, former bandmate of mine, Alan Hall, great drummer. He lives in Asheville, North Carolina now. We saw him when we were driving down here. Yeah. He played the drums in his studio, and I'm on bass and piano and all the other stuff. And then we got Bob Bowlby, great saxophone player in Boston, to do a bunch of saxophones on here. Yeah. And it all came together remotely. And the show just blew up. I mean, people went nuts. And, you know, so I knew that this was going to be a thing. So I hustled to get the music released. And I've used CD Baby for years. But for some reason, it was not working out this time. And I was getting nervous that I wasn't going to get the thing available, because you want that Shazam. When somebody hears something, because I do this all the time, if I hear something on the TV, I'm pressing that button. I want to know what it is. So, and this is kind of a one-shot deal. You know, this is not a series that goes into syndication. You know, there's X amount of a life to a daytime show. So when it's that moment, you want to be prepped. All you people that are getting songs, you know, in films and TV shows, get that release out there, because the whole trickle down of what happens after the fact. I mean, sheet music I had online. I had it ready to go. So the links were available. I put it up through DistroKid literally 2 hours before the show aired. The release was live. God, so my wife was, you know, Gay is like watching her phone, you know, it's like, wow, man, you know, it's like, it's Shazamming, you know. But this works for everybody, you know. So the show's been really interesting. I'll just back up a little bit about it. Once again, folks, because I don't know if I'll have some Berklee Online people here. Probably...
and let me interrupt you quickly, because Tavana is here.
Tavana, I love you. Now,
so is Mike.
Yeah. Mike,
my brother. He said he's teaching, but his student, Keenan, is watching with him.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope he saw me breaking up while I was talking about him. So.
Yeah, he almost cried, Mike.
Yeah, he's the number one mensch, for sure.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
And yeah, maybe we can go out with Tavana's thing, because she just nailed the crap out of it. She was just awesome.
Yeah.
So the thing about the students and the teacher thing, it's always been sort of the old school thing, is that the teacher sort of mentors the students that really want to do it. They sort of tap that and hopefully connect, as my brother and I did. You know, we all connected with our teachers, and we're gigging with our teachers, you know, when we were teenagers. So then that expands your network. It also challenges you, because you usually get beat up a lot because you're really not ready, but you're kind of ready. So that sort of relationship where the teacher is often helping students as a mentor, but professionally, has kind of flip-flopped on me in the world that I'm in now with Berklee Online, where our demographic, well, yes, we do have youngsters that might be teenagers, but we have a lot of people that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even above that are taking the class. And some of them are just kick-ass people in their industry already, but they're trying to expand an area that they want to work on, or technology or something. The exponential curve that we keep talking about has gone too quickly for them to be able to work in a certain sector. Even though they're very schooled and know the ropes, this is an area that just didn't exist 5 years ago, and now they have to deal with it. So that's what happened in my music supervision online course. Is I had this student, he was older, not as old as me, but older, and we have these live classes. That's part of the course thing. It's a 12-week course, and we have 1 hour where the teacher or facilitator is there live Zoom for those class. So this guy was always coming, always had great things to say, was really active with the class and, commenting on other people's submissions and stuff. And I'm like, dang, this guy's got it together. So I would tap that because on the interview, on these live classes, I would say, hey, R.C. Cates is his name. I said, R.C., so what was your experience doing this or that? Oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So this is great, man. This is awesome. And then one day he sat down, we're all with our Zoom things here. People have backgrounds or whatever, He sits down in front of his wall of Emmys. And I went, okay. I didn't really know you before, but now I need to know you. So here's a case of a student coming to me that's got all this kind of stuff together. So this is the other big word to all of us out there. And I just said this to my class the other day. I mean, we're all being observed. For those times, Cathy, or anybody that's a performing musician, that you're in a club, like even in the old days in Boston, where the band outnumbered the people in the crowd, right? You never know who is in the room. And maybe even if they're a friend of somebody else. So, oh, yeah, that's not somebody I know or care about. Well, maybe that's the sister of so-and-so. And maybe they're going to go back and say, man, I heard this scorching band or this great vocalist or whatever. So this is what happens. And so RC, did the course because he'd been working daytime his whole life. And he's obviously a pro as a composer and a music supervisor. But he'd always been working within a production studio that helped solve a lot of the licensing things. They had licensing and clearance departments. So he didn't work independently, and he had offers to do some independent stuff. So he wanted to learn a little bit more about that, and that's why he took the class. But 2 months after the course ended, he called us and said, hey, do you and Gay want to write for the show? Because I just got the gig as the supervisor.
Oh my God.
And and so now 6 years we've been writing for the show, and it's changed our life because all the parts of our lives that revenue mainly that you would have gotten from live performances and arranging an orchestration I continue to do, but that is a lot spottier than what we used to be doing, which was playing all the time. And so this was like a great shift for us. So we could make music, and it's really challenging. I've got to, if people go to my website, they can go look in the news things, and they'll hear clips of me doing this old school film noir stuff. Because when they have a storyline that goes, okay, we're doing this all black and white, and it's going to be a dream sequence, you got to deliver. So this show has 30 to 50 pieces of music in every episode, and this is 5 days a week. This is CBS. Wow. It's like the most watched every episode. Every episode is 30 to 50 pieces of music in like a 42
How do you even do that?
Well, it's a lot, and it's bits and pieces. You're not having complete performances of songs, but you're having a mixture of songs and underscore, of course, a little bit more what you would expect, dramatic underscore. And then stuff is layered on top of each other at different points. We're hanging out in this hotel lobby, and there's a smooth jazz tune happening. But now that character has said something that set the other person going, So here comes the drone, No, sorry. Sorry. Anyway,
Do you also put the music? Of course you do. Put the music together with the instruments and
Yeah, so basically, my gig is a mixture of sometimes doing the whole, if it's scoring,
yeah.
I'm generally doing all the emulations. So I only pulled up a couple of things, just to have hanging around. But one of the things is the sexy scenes. All right, let me switch my camera here so you can see what I'm doing here. Where is my camera?
Brad, do you do most of the instruments, or do you hire out instruments too?
That's the thing. I mean, the one gig that I did. Yeah, I think I got it now. I'm mirrored. Hang on a second. Oh, that's better. So the sorry, still kind of mirrored here. There's no budget. We're working all for back end here. So it's all performance royalties for writers and publishers. So I'm doing this all speculatively, but we're really good at it. So we have a great track record, and it does turn into real money. So when I just literally before we got on this call, I got a call from the music supervisor for an episode that he has. He wants me to finish up the episode with some dramatic score that needs to be custom done. So I'm going to do that all myself. That show that I was referencing before with all the jazz stuff, I did not want to put fake saxophone and fake trumpet in there, and so I spent the money to really get it right. But since I don't have a composer budget on this show, which is unlike other shows I've done for Sony. I maybe shouldn't have said that. But my other composer deals, I normally have a healthy budget per episode. So
Yeah.
I spend my money on players and studio time, and plus you get paid for your creative thing.
Man, you
But
guys are working your butts off. And
we
so
do.
both you and Gay do
Yeah.
this work,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
basically daily, or right? It's pretty much
Well,
daily, right?
she wrote a couple of cues. I guess we can switch out of this. But anyway, this is my little rig. But here's my flugelhorn. But well, I got my Mike Matheny reverb on there, Mike, if you're watching. But so there's certain sounds that I can emulate pretty well. And the other thing is, folks, that do this kind of stuff, it really helps if you know how to play the real instrument or have worked with it. So you know how to make the best out of what you're working with. I got to switch this mirroring thing around. It's really confusing when I change things. So just this morning, last night we get a text from there's two music supervisors because the work is just insane. They do 6 episodes a week that they have to get in the can. So they have that one stockpiled. So RC emailed us last night saying, hey, there's these 2 characters, Victoria and Ashland, they've got a thing going on, and I've already done some stuff for them. He's come up with some new themes for them. And he said, hey, can you and Gay take some new themes that he's created and just run with those and just sort of develop them out so they have some different flavors of that same thematic material. So while I was walking the dog this morning, I come back and on my phone is 2 MP3s and MIDI files from Gay, who was working on this stuff this morning while I was walking the dog. And then Mike calls and says, oh, there's this other episode now. Actually, I have a time crunch because I say, okay, who's on first here? Who do we have to get to first? Because by Friday we need to have, satisfy both needs,
Yeah.
So it sort of varies about
Well, I'm even
when
more
working.
impressed that you're taking the time to spend with me today.
Well,
And do you get to play these days?
yeah, it's a funny thing about the playing, and this is kind of a deep topic. When I first got to Boston as the youngster that wanted to
Yeah.
play with Miles, like I want to play fast and really crazy stuff, and all of us were doing GB gigs because I mean, you would play at some of the fun little jazz clubs that paid next to nothing, just the Sunflower Cafe
And I just have to interrupt because remember, GB is a Boston thing.
Yeah.
General business. It means for us out in California, it's casuals. It's like weddings, one-off gigs.
Yeah. Corporate weddings.
Yeah.
And you're there to, please the crowd that's there, and certain sets of repertoire that you're just going to be doing all the time. And actually, that's, there's two parts to this discussion since we even went there. But when I got to Boston and I was playing, I was playing with myself. I was playing with the old men. The old men hired the young people, right?
Yes.
To do these gigs, and you would work for probably less money than they were making, but you were getting experience, and like I said, getting your ass kicked too, because even if you thought you knew something, you don't really know everything, and if you don't know everything, then just buck up and start learning. Listen to these folks because they've got a lot going on. But I would occasionally be on a gig where there was somebody, and it's not age, it's just they're hobbyists now,
right?
And so the chops aren't there, or maybe their attitude is off, and it's just like, I don't need negative energy, because if I'm going to do GB and casuals, that kind of work, we're going to nail the crap out of it, man. We're going to do a really good job. And our drummer became the drummer of the Boston Pops, and bass player Oscar Stagnaro is like a world-renowned, electric bass player, and I mean, our band, we had really great people in our band, and I don't care. We're playing the chicken dance. Let's play the crap out of it, But when I did run into folks that were past their prime, I said, I never want to be that person.
Yeah.
And through my time, with doing stuff with a lot of the jazz folks, especially, folks like George Russell, who were just like the highest level of challenging music, and the Boston Pops stuff, where I was working with all kinds of folks, and also just being an orchestral pianist, and dealing with conducting, and a harpist that's 50 feet away from you that you have to be in absolute sync with, and you have to figure out where is that harpist going to put that downbeat when the baton, or maybe it's just fingers, and maybe there's a few of them, you have to go ping. So I was working at a level, and I thought, I don't want to not cut it, and it's certainly not in these kind of things. I mean, July 4th, 500,000 people live on the Esplanade, plus live TV. Mistakes are not acceptable,
right?
And weird things happen because you're outdoors, and artists that come in, they've barely rehearsed with you, so you have to be on your toes. I mean, Patti LaBelle, kind of went off on the end of one of these tunes that we were doing that was brand new to her, and it was a big arrangement that was amazing by Pat Hollenbeck, and I got to credit him. He's a great percussionist, orchestrator, and the head of our union in Boston. He's the one that went to bat for me to get me into the Pops, and first gig was with John Williams conducting, and it was a recording session, no rehearsal. Okay. So I made it through that. So what am I trying to say is that I did many, many years of working at a certain level, and I just didn't want to be that person. So we play for fun over in here. I'm playing all the time on the music that I work on, but I can go back and move that note if I want to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I always prided myself as far as a session player, even doing ads and stuff where you're working, I would literally have a stopwatch on the piano at Soundtrack Music, Soundtrack Studios in Boston. And if I had to do a 30-second version of maybe it was just a solo piano thing, and that's why I could do it like this, I prided myself on watching that pre-roll and just getting out, let that ring out happen, and just be right there. And if you're on a thing, you're not the one that messes up. You read or you prep. So I don't know. Gay is kind of nudging me. And another vocalist that's in the area here, she's awesome, and she's out gigging all the time, and she came over here for a little jam session as soon as some vaccines were out there, and we had a great time with her. And then she called me for a gig like 2 days later, and she talked to Gay first, and she goes, "Good luck getting him out of the house." And so that's what's kind of weird. But Cathy, I think that it will get to a point where I'll be comfortable with a certain kind of thing. But if I just don't want to. I don't want to be that person. That's
Yeah.
a big
Are you
thing.
near Miami? Is West Palm Beach near Miami?
Yeah, we're like maybe 2.5 hours down to Miami from where
Because
we
I
are.
mean, there's a bunch of really good people
Yeah.
over there now, like John Diversa. I don't know if you know John, but he's
Mhm.
a great person and a highly quality music individual. Plays amazing trumpet and writes for his very unique band, big band, and he has a small group that he writes for,
Mhm.
and he's dean of the college there.
Okay.
Then there's Kate. Kate. Uh-oh, sorry, my
I
brain.
know. I
Well,
know.
I'm
It's
gonna look her name up.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, for this project that I just did for this.
Kate Reed, excuse me.
Okay.
Kate Reed. She's a great
Okay.
singer, great jazz singer,
Yeah.
really great. I mean, there's a bunch of people over there, but
Yeah.
anyway.
It's a resource that I thought about actually utilizing, just because when I was getting up against the clock, and I wasn't sure remotely whether I was going to get everything in that I needed quickly enough. I did start reaching out and getting some contacts down there. So if I had to set something up, but man, in the midst of COVID, it was just really
Oh
hard.
yeah,
So
and Shelley Berg too. You should.
oh yeah, Shelley's great.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
don't, do you
yeah.
know him?
Well, he replaced me on the Livingston Taylor album that I was going to be playing on.
Oh yeah.
I didn't. Livingston asked me, and then the next thing I knew, it was out with Shelley.
Oh.
It's
Oh.
Livingston. If you're watching, Anyway, it's okay. It's all right. Um, yeah, it's yeah, the live thing. I thought, this is what I say. I mean, I did it for 45 years.
Yeah.
And now my big phrase is, do you know who I was? But I've redirected, I've challenged myself, and I get in over my head with other stuff now. I mean, I've moved more into scoring. I mean, we do a ton of smooth jazz stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to play a little bit of one of Gay's tunes that we're sort
Yeah.
of testing a minute before. So that stuff's a lot of fun, and it's also a challenge, just like to fit the bill for the show.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm working with younger folks that for the show they need stuff that's sort of Dua Lipa, dancey,
Yeah.
techie stuff, and vocals and what have you. So I'm working with some former students and acquaintances, and they're just nailing the crap out of it. But there's a lot of back and forth when they send me something. I'm going, yeah, that having 4 breakdowns in your tune is not going to be a music editor's dream. So let's find one, and then all these sounds that are sort of popping out, we're going to have to downsize those. And so I work with them to deliver something that, once again, works with dialogue. And we also do a lot of alternate mixes. So you have to have it. Full mix with the vocal in there, and then a mix that's just the track with no vocal. And that allows them to sort of run both at the same time and sort of dip that vocal thing down. So you still hear the vocal quietly, but it doesn't get in the way of dialogue. And then we deliver stems sometimes too, or sub mixes. And that allows them to kind of score a scene, even though it's coming from a song. They're using aspects of what's in there. So all I'm trying to do is get the writers in, and if the writers get in, I get in because I'm their publisher. So it works well for both parties. And if we deliver in such a way that the show is happy with how things are coming in, then their job's easier. And if their job's easier and they look good, then the executive producer who's overseeing it is happy. And the re-recording mix engineer is happy, because everything moving up the food chain is like, I'm helping you. I'm trying to help you here. What do you need? How can I help you? So that's the thing. And so, do you age out? No, but you make some conscious decisions of, that's not really my thing. I really don't want to push buttons, I can play stuff, and I can write some really nice string parts, and I can get live players and I can produce them. That's what I do. So you guys that are the button pushers and also have the really cool sounds and don't, that's your thing, and you've got the voices and the mixing techniques that are right for that music, you do that, but I can help you. So that's that's where I'm at now, But I do miss it, especially if I listen to like old recordings of, with Rebecca Paris. You mentioned Matt Gordy. There's some old videos of us up on YouTube playing some of the gigs, and I miss that. And it's like it all seems so effortless because you did it like every day,
Yeah.
But towards the end, I stopped kind of taking gigs because I'm like, I'm doing a million other things and I don't have those chops and I don't want to have to hold back, but I certainly don't want to miss either,
Yeah.
So this is a struggle, man. It's a struggle,
Wow. It's pretty intense, Brad.
That's a lot of confession there.
That is. It's intense in a good way. Talking about Rebecca, I asked Marla if she wanted to be on the show, and she was like, I don't know. I don't think I can. But, of course, she would know a lot about Rebecca. Actually, Paul would know, too.
Sure.
But, Rebecca was, there's a few singers who have passed on. A singer, actually, right here, Stephanie Haynes, and she and I were friends for years, and she was kind of like Rebecca, like one of the best singers I ever heard, And Rebecca, I don't know if you know this, but Rebecca, she was a year older than me, and she and I met in junior high in the Newton something or other, the singers and and then there was the Greater Bostonians, which was a group that two arrangers put together with a handful of students from various high schools, instruments and singers, and very hip arrangements. So Rebecca and I were in that together. But that was when she was, her name was, I forget. It was like, Ruth McCluskey.
Yeah, Ruth McCluskey. Yeah, and the McCluskey family was a renowned, vocal health, crew.
Yeah, he wrote the book. I had that book before I met Rebecca. And my teacher, my English teacher at Newton South was the one who told me. He said, "Oh, Rebecca Paris, we were talking, I was living in LA." I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Yes, you do. It was Ruth McCluskey." And I was like, "What? That's Rebecca Paris?" And then we got back in touch, and she was an amazing person and an amazing singer.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, being in a trio with her, and especially with, Matt and Peter Contreras and I, really, and later on, Jim Latini played drums once Matt left. But those early days of that trio, one thing I just loved about it is that we would give her so much space to let her do her thing. Well, I should say let music do its thing, right? There was never overplaying, there was never crowding, and there was, if anything, we adapted the Shirley Horn approach of leave space until people are like leaning forward, like, oh my God, is something going? Oh, it happened, which also meant, as a piano player or bass player, every note that you played mattered because everything is hanging out there. It's not a flurry of like, okay, that's just a bunch of sound and texture coming at you. These are lines, and there's three lines happening. There's the vocal, and then whatever line is implied in the keyboard and the bass. So I really enjoyed that. I really loved, accompanying her because she always told a story. She was always about the lyric, even though she would change how the lyric was supposed to come across. She would emphasize certain things and could change the meaning, right? And anyway, so it was an amazing ride for sure. We played at Birdland a couple times, and I had this kick-ass piano there that was just, I had so much fun. So yeah, I was always the happiest if we had a nice piano, and she's got a great system, everybody can hear each other great, and it would be really intimate, and you could just make music. So huge loss, but also the fact that she was on the planet at all is a huge plus. So there you go.
That's very positive of you. Ellen Ferraro says hi.
Hey, Ellen, how you doing?
Yeah.
Another close one of the crew, one of the Rebecca. Crew.
Yeah, Rebecca, man, she was so cool. Let's see, and then I'd love to talk about George Russell a little.
Yeah.
What can you say about George? I mean,
Yeah, there's a kind of a fun story here too.
and can you tell people who George Russell
Yeah,
is in a nutshell?
yeah. George Russell was, in the age of Gil Evans and Miles Davis, and originally a drummer, but after he heard Max Roach, he quit the drums and and went to piano. But he was a composer, arranger, and you're right on cue with the tuberculosis because that's what he had. He ended up in in the hospital dealing with TB, and while there, he started just thinking about the organization of music and modes in particular, and trying to push the envelope of everything sort of based on this sort of Euro set of rules of the major scale. Well, actually, let me go over to piano here, so this will be good.
By the way, do you remember I knew the Japanese translator of his book? Do you remember that?
It's not Hero, though, right? It's somebody else, right?
I don't remember because it was so long ago.
Yeah, yeah.
But I remember talking to you about that actually.
Yeah, yeah. So George, what he worked out, or what his theory was, like, we've been working with the wrong major scale here. Everybody thinks, oh, did I lose my? Hang on a second. All right, so we think that as a major scale, right? The Ionian mode, as it's called, right? Well, his whole thing was, it's beyond the Lydian. His thing is called the Lydian chromatic concept of tonal organization. All right, so that's a mouthful, right? So the Lydian scale has this raised fourth degree. I guess I could try to switch cameras, but I don't know how well this is
You
going to
don't
go.
have to. That's
Okay,
fine.
all right. So,
Right.
all right, so here's what happened. I'm 16 years old, and my sister's boyfriend, Dave Workman, great blues guitar player, was always into checking out people's different systems, and he was way into Pat Martino, the guitar player, but he was studying George Russell's thing. And he thought, oh, this is really cool. So we had this sort of a collective where we had it was what happened after Van's music sales. It was a workshop environment where a lot of teachers were, but also they had ensembles playing there and so forth. I can't remember the name of the actual place, but Dave hooked up with George Russell, who's originally from Cincinnati, and he'd been living in Sweden, but he came back to Cincinnati for something, and he passed through Columbus, and he came and gave a workshop. So I went to his workshop when I was 16 years old, and he sat down at the piano, and he played that scale, and then he played them all at once. And he goes, do you like that, or do you like this? So, as opposed to, so he just played that one. Oh crap! I don't know. Maybe we've been doing this wrong, right? So his whole thing was, we're kind of, if you want to go where nature speaks, this is maybe a better home plate for you. So that's one of many parts of his thing. Basically, if you work with the overtones series, you kind of arrive a lot of these notes where the chromatic part comes in, and I'm going to run out of notes because I don't have an 88 here. But I'm just going to stack up fifths, starting from C. Sorry. So what's interesting about it is that they're all spread out, so you don't really hear the crunch as we played them all at once in the same register. But kind of the last note you're going to get to is that fourth degree, that F natural, as opposed to the F sharp. The F sharp comes up a lot sooner. So that's a very loose look at, what he was saying is like, we were told, and some of it from religious reasons and cultural things, that this is the scale that you work with. But he's going, yeah, I'm not really happy with that. I would rather this be our home scale, and that's a Lydian flat 7 with, with the 13 and the 9th in there. So it has that sort of flat 7 sound in there, which is a very jazzy chord. So I went to that workshop and I bought his book, and then I did a book report on it in high school. And my teacher said, "What the hell is this?" I said, "My book report. Yeah, look at all the modes." So, so I was introduced to him really early on, and by the time I got to Berkeley, at least I was aware of all this stuff. And then George released an album called The Africa Game, because back in the day he did stuff with Miles, with Eric Dolphy, David Baker,
Yeah.
Joe Hunt played on those things, drummer in Boston, and I mean he worked with everybody, and they played his music, and the stuff was hard. I mean, Miles refused to play the Head to Aesthetic, so I ain't playing that. It was just too hard, right? You guys can play it, and it would be really challenging for people to play, because his whole thing was trying to rough things up a little bit. So I heard an album, I guess right after I met him. I was way into Bill Evans, a nice jazz pianist and very lyrical. And Bill did an album with George Russell called Living Time. Mm-hmm. And there was one piece on there that was almost like, okay, I can understand this thing. But everything else was some crazy ass shit, man. And I went, oh man, you're going to get Bill fired, but it was wild, this blending of George's music with Bill. And of course it was the home of the stars on this recording. I think there were 3 bass players. I think Eddie Gomez, I know, came in and played stuff, and Ron Carter, somebody else, maybe on electric. But anyway, just if you look at the list of personnel, it's ridiculous. So I got familiar with that music, and then I just kind of moved on to my Chick Corea, McCoy Tyner piano world, Herbie Hancock stuff that you were listening to. But later on down the road, I was still in Boston, and George was teaching at New England Conservatory and teaching his thing there and doing his music. George Garzone, also one of those folks you never want to solo after him, saxophone player, was in a band that George had put together to support the album called The African Game. It was a double album. And it was just unbelievable, rhythmically, melodically, harmonically, just ear-bending stuff, really unique. 2 keyboards in that needed to play that music. And George Garzone reached out to me and said, "Hey, Hat Man, George is the keyboard player. The last one's kind of left the room, and we didn't see him again." Because George was really nasty with these people. If you didn't cut it, he would just like totally take you out. And really old school, man, really old school. But these were with a lot of conservatory students and a couple of New York pros mixed in, but a lot of, NEC folks. And he was kind of rough with folks. So anyway, I went over to his place, and Alice was there, and this was up in this place in Cambridge. And
you must have been nervous.
It was ridiculous, because when I met him, I said, I met you well, probably then it was only 15 years ago, but I was only 16 years old. Right. But he remembered the trip, and he remembered being there and everything. And so he goes, "All right, I'm not going to do his voice. We're going to do a tour, and there's 2 keyboard parts, but I don't. The other keyboard player is going to be he's in New York, and he's not going to be here for these rehearsals. So I need you to prepare, both books." And both books were literally this big. I mean, because most all of his music was very extended, 20, 30 page long, written out, Occasionally chord symbols would pop up, and you go, take a breath, not that you were safe, because if you didn't play the right stuff, even with the chord symbols, you get,
Wow.
But anyway, so he brings that out, and he goes, "All right, this is what we're doing." And I'm like, he goes, "You okay with this?" And we're going to rehearse on Monday. Now this was like Friday, and I have 3 GB gigs that weekend. And so I left his place literally with a stack, like out off camera range here. And I'm going, oh God, don't mess this up. So then Garzone calls me and said, I said, which ones are the songs or the pieces of music that sent the piano players packing? And so he said, all right, the intro to, not New York, Autumn in New York. He goes, there's two huge piano solos in the middle of these other pieces, and they're all written out, and they're all very, huge. So I just had to target my practice time, between gigs and staying up most of the nights, to shed those things, because I knew that that's what was going to blow it for me or seal the deal. And then the day of the rehearsal, the NEC people, there's a lot of big steps to get up, and then where we rehearsed with like 2 flights down, no cart. I'm dragging a Fender Rhodes and 2 cents. I destroyed my back, but I get down in there. I'm so wired, man, and we're running through all these tunes, and I'm like, wow, where's that synth sound? Oh crap, what's in the other book? Try to pull that up, running over to the piano to play this. I'm like freaking out. And then he calls this tune Stratus Funk, which I think Gil arranged or wrote. I'm going to get this wrong, but it's a blues. It's just an F blues. Thank God. And I just tore into it with an organ solo, and he goes, you got the gig. And I was like, well, damn, if we just played the blues, I could have dispensed with all this other practicing of the 11/8, craziness,
Oh my God.
But anyway, I ended up with him for 20 plus years, and it was amazing because because he kept writing, and but he would also whip out old things and just sort of throw it up at a rehearsal. He just loved to hear his music, and when he had players that could do it, then he wanted to hear everything.
So he was pretty prolific as far as composing, right?
Yeah. And some of the stuff got expanded out for orchestral things. Actually, we're talking about it now because he would have been 100 years in 2023. So we're actually talking about maybe putting some kind of a thing together, which means I do have to start practicing. Or when it comes to All About Rosie, which is this ridiculous thing where the whole band stops and you're playing as fast as you can by yourself. We'll get the whippersnapper in there for that. So she can play it.
That's incredible. 20 years of that. I mean, your brain must have rearranged several times in that.
Wow, you just said something, Cathy. I mean, I this is something I was thinking about today while I was walking the dogs. What do I really want to get across here is that the sum of everything that you do in the music world, even if you're an observer, because what it was, I was just Alan Hewitt. He's a progressive rock keyboard. He actually lives across the pond from us. He plays with the Moody Blues. So we had him over for dinner, and we were jamming the other night. Oh, and wow. I said, I can tell you the first time I heard this chord, augmented major seventh. And I thought, I know when I heard that chord for the first time, it was Tiger's Baku and Pooh's Pub. I was sitting in the second row, right in front of the keyboard. I mean, that thing just set off an alarm, and that's part of my DNA now, right? Yeah. So all this music that I'd been taking in, and this includes playing the wedding gigs, and I'll make this connection because I dropped the ball on it earlier. But everything that you do just keeps getting absorbed, and if you vibe with it and you let it be there, it becomes something that will become part of your own voice, right? You know what I'm talking about, because we learned by listening, right? I mean, transcribing is something, but just taking it in, not necessarily notes, but many other things besides that, phrasing, rhythmic field, tone.
Sure.
So George's music, of course, had started having an impact on what I was doing jazz-wise. Now my stuff started getting crazier. So I had my, influence from his stuff. So now I will say this, one of the coolest gigs I ever did was filling in. It wasn't for Don Grolnick. It was after Don, but before Larry Goldings, who plays for James Taylor. I did a Pops gig, and literally at the last minute, they had to cancel or delay the concert one day. This was for John Kerry's, when he was running for president, and we did this in Boston. It was an outdoor thing. John Williams conducting. And I got the call, like, can you get down here now? And by the time I got down to Symphony Hall, the rehearsal was done. So I was just going to play the next day with no rehearsal with James and John, It's just like we had Jim Gwynn was playing drums, and Jim worships James. And not only is he a great drummer, but great guitar player and organ player and piano player. Kind of makes me sick. And he's a nice guy.
And he's a nice guy.
And I think he's fairly good looking, too. But anyway, he was such a devotee of James. One of my favorite moments musically was not something that I was doing, even though I was happy to be up on that stage and sitting there like that and playing music with them, was when Jim played this fill, just like exactly like the record. And James, he's got this sea of people out there, just turns around. And I think that made it for Jim, too, because it was just like, once again, you absorb all these things, and if it has value, you retain it and you use it and hopefully apply it. Just quickly, with that being said, for folks that feel like they're stuck in a spot doing music that, like, okay, I've already done this, I don't want to do it anymore, or God forbid that you have this music is beneath me. The whole thing about doing the wedding gigs and the corporate gigs and playing cover tunes and hotel lounges and all that stuff, it all came to my advantage when the first live gig I had with the Pops after this recording thing was a July 4th thing with the Pointer Sisters. Pointer Sisters arrived from Australia. They had been flying all night, but they had to be there for the rehearsal, and they showed up. And we have what we call a piano conductor rehearsal. So it's just, if you're the pianist on the show, you're playing piano, the conductor's right behind you, and the singers or artists are standing right next to you, or in the case of Patti LaBelle, sitting on the bench next to you. And let's just say that my movement was, I'm not going any further than this. I'm not going to get out of bounds here. But I had the Pointer Sisters right behind my head, and they had no charts, because they were held up, in the shipping. But I knew all the tunes. I called up Gay, and I think I was, okay, their music's not there. We literally used the charts that we used in our wedding band, for my piano rehearsal. And I made it through, and they're like, you want to join the band? I was like, I don't know. But my point being is then I got to work with other folks that came through, great artists that I'd been covering their tunes, and now you're actually playing with them, but they're in unfamiliar territory because they're playing with an orchestra, and that's not their comfort zone. They're also dealing with new arrangements that they've never heard before. And so now, usually with a rhythm section thing, you kind of need to be, even though I'm not really MD, they would sort of work with this artist so they're comfortable, so they can do our thing and the orchestra can do their thing and everybody's on the same page. So one of the cover conductors used to call me the translator. With Susan Tedeschi, her band, they're mostly ear players. They're fantastic, and but I had to speak in their language while the conductor is talking about bar numbers. And just like be talking about how many times that riff goes, and when it goes up, the octave, then we know that that's the last time out and stuff like that. But that all that stuff comes forward, and you can use it. The other thing about studying music, other music that you don't normally play, is that if you really listen closely and you listen to these bass lines, the James Jamerson stuff, or drum grooves or whatever, listen to Steve Gadd. It's not that complicated. It's just really hard to be what he does, to make something simple sound so great, even though he's got chops. But all that stuff can be part of your DNA moving forward, and now you've got more tools to choose from, and continually being open to
It's great.
stuff.
It's great to hear you say all that. And I think people probably feel good about hearing you say it, because you're coming from a moment in time where you're very successful at doing what you're doing, and you've been successful for a long time. And for you to look back at that and say that, I think people might have felt good in that, but maybe not thought about it. It reminds me of a few things. One thing is, when I was, whatever, how many, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was working all the time in casuals and cover bands and stuff. I remember literally adoring playing Pink Cadillac, and got off on it so much. And I remember 3 gigs in a row in a day, and I had passed through the exhaustion, and I was the time was so delicious. It was what was pulling me through it, the musical experience. And I know for a fact that got inside me. Also, recently, I think not only me, but a number of singers have been collecting music from the 70s, through the 90s.
Yeah.
And I'm coming out with a record of stuff, that I was listening to in Boston,
Yeah.
and it's very real to me, that stuff. Very real. I mean, I'm definitely a jazz singer, but that stuff is, it's like part of my blood. It's the blood that's been running through me for years, and it's a very holistic thing when you look at it. It's very satisfying, and you kind of feel like, yeah, good job. You've moved through life and you've experienced it and you've taken stuff. And the other thing is, like last week here, we had, you probably know some of these guys. Actually, the drummer went to college with us, Tim Horner.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, he went to college with us,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then Dean Johnson, the bass player.
Yeah.
And
I played with him actually at Birdland with Rebecca. He was one of the bass players that actually played with us down there. Yeah.
he's so friggin' good.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God. And Jim Riddle
Yeah.
and Paul Jost. Do you know Paul, the singer?
I know the name, but I don't. Yeah.
So he's working with them.
Yeah.
He's been working with them for a while, and he is a drummer, but he also is a singer. And these days he's singing, and he's just without going on and on, he's that kind of singer. Because this is what you said made me think too. It's like I trust these artists so much that I can sit there with this feeling of total openness and absorbing what they are putting out, and I feel like I've been changed. Last week, I just feel like I've changed from last week listening, and that's the beautiful thing. And tying into what you were saying about you are everything. You're the sum of what you've experienced and lived. It actually makes me very emotional.
Yeah.
I get very emotional about this subject because it's really what we should be thinking about, I think, as mankind, instead of fucking distracted by, politics and health and racism and, that stupid shit, man, that should be on some other planet, or maybe we should be on some other planet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel very passionate about it,
Yeah. It comes down to community and respect. Like I mentioned before with the thing with Rebecca, respecting the space, and also going out on a limb sometimes so far where we'd have these pregnant beats that would just like take forever to arrive. We're like, who's going to go first, But the whole point is that you're not filling it with a bunch of shite, and that it really is about being with musicians. And when I say musicians, I mean vocalists and instrumentalists, anybody that's creating music. If you're in that space, to try to just be aware of what you're doing in that space. And when you're with that good combination of folks that respect it, but also inspire you, which is the other thing, and not try to rough you up. I've been on a couple of gigs where just people, I'd play for guest artists that would come in and there's really no rehearsal and sometimes no charts, which is my nightmare. With some of the jazzers that would come in and just assume that this or that, And I had a couple times where it's just like, dang, man, this is like negative energy, If I had known what you wanted me to do, I would have prepped or be ready to have something. But I don't want to not be making music. I don't want to be playing defensively.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a challenge. That trust with everybody that's part of the music making thing.
Guess who's here? Glenn Davis.
Oh, Glenn. Was he in the band picture?
Yes, he was our drummer.
Was he taking the picture or was he visible in the picture?
No, he was visible in the picture. I can
okay,
picture him with his long dark hair.
All right, so J.C. Penney's or what kind of BVDs or boxers?
Kind of, I think it was BVDs. I don't know.
Back in the
or
day.
maybe, I
Hey,
don't know.
Glenn. Woo!
When we were talking about that picture of us, like with me lying there with my hairy armpits out and you guys in your shorts and paisley shirts. And yeah, Bob Bowlby.
Yeah, Bob Bowlby, great saxophonist. And I mean, well, if you want to, I mean, we could take a little pause and I could play this. If
Yeah.
Tavana is still there, I would love
Yeah.
folks for her.
Actually, Gay was here for a minute in between classes. Do you know Oscar Hernandez? He's here and he made a comment. Fantastic
Yeah,
player.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Let me play, or actually, well, let's see here. Yeah, if I play, I think probably, what was happening, we were saying that the audio was kind of cutting in and out a little bit. It might have been just, I don't know if you had your mic
You want me to
muted.
do?
Well, no, I just wondering whether your mic was not muted, so since it's coming back in the speakers, that
It's not muted, but
yeah. So when I play, you'll want to mute, and then that way, it won't kind of loop back in, which is what I think was happening. And
okay. Sometimes because of my settings, and I'm sorry,
oh, okay.
it's sometimes if I mute, then the audience can't hear.
I
So,
understand.
not
Okay, never.
really
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But I could play it too from here.
Yeah. Why don't you do it from there then? And
Okay, you
we'll
send me
we'll
the
see.
link, and Tavana
Yeah.
is still here.
Actually, do you still have? Because I'm struggling
Yeah,
here
I
to
do.
find this fast enough.
Where is it? The first one you sent, or
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's actually on that page that you were on your browser. So if you want to just pull up the browser and
Okay.
share that with me, I can help you. So Tavana, like I said, just went in there totally prepared, and once again made my life easy with no auto tuning. Everything just came in great, and
is it the one I Am
yes,
Love?
that's it. That's it.
Okay.
So, so this tune was going to end the show, and I thought it was maybe a little bit radical for the soap opera folks. I had in the back of my head, it's like this is what they asked for. They wanted a Nina Simone darker thing. They originally wanted the tune Footprints. So it's this baseline sort of infused thing that's dark and minory. So I didn't make it in this pulse because the character, and after we listen to this, maybe I'll share a little bit of the video of this other tune. But the idea was I was trying to nail all the things that they wanted. Nina Simone, a positive lyric that was celebrating life. Simple
Yeah.
message
Yeah.
that we all need love, to get us through, right? But when I looked at it and thought about it for the closing thing, I knew that I may not be able to get it. So this song opens up the episode, and it also is played later on in the episode as well. So she got two appearances on this, but here you're going to get the full version here, the 3-minute thing with where there's no dialogue and you get to hear everything. So you can let
Okay,
it roll.
that's cool. By the way, I realized that we have like Bevan in common too, Bevan Manson.
Oh yeah, man. And I watched that Bevan one, and it was awesome. He's so great, man. One of my
He
favorites.
was great. Yeah,
Oh
he was
my
great
God.
on here. He's Bevan. He's a
Yeah,
G.
he
Okay.
is.
So here's I Am Love featuring
Yeah.
Tavana Miller. Oh.
As you cross the river wide, I'll be at your side. I am whole. I am peace. I am love. I am love.
Oh, beautiful. Wow, beautiful song, and she has a voice like velvet.
It's unbelievable.
The
I had
whoa, man. Woo, gorgeous.
I'm so lucky that I've had these incredible students, you know, that just are just awesome. So we've got more stuff coming. I'm actually working on one of her other tunes, you know, as we speak here, trying to squeeze all these things in. And I have to apologize to my brother Michael for not hiring him for vibes for these tunes. You know,
Oh, that's so nice of you.
well, it would have been nicer if I could have gotten them in, but man, it was just like the deadlines were like ridiculous, and the edits and going back and forth made it troubling. You know, unlike a regular release where you're just putting the music out there to be its own thing. This had to work for the scenes, and I needed a lot of flexibility, and it also had to work underneath dialogue. That's why these tunes also have, you know, a fair amount of space in them, and register of the vocal, you know, is kept to a space where it just kind of hangs there. That's just the unfortunate part of the world that putting music to picture sometimes pushes us. But the challenge is, and I always tell folks, you know. I'm a crafts person, and I try to put as much art into my craft as I can.
Yeah.
I just can't go full on art for music for media because it makes it really hard to get used. So, you know, I don't want to say the word watering down, but I want to say it's a matter of adjustments. So it serves just like great underscore for a movie too. You know, you don't want to hear it all the time. You want to feel it, and you want it to enhance the story. So anyway,
It's just a different creation. That's all it is, really, because it calls for something different, and you're always serving the music, right? And if the music needs this, then that's how you have to serve it, you know. And if it needs this, then you serve it like that too, right?
Yeah. And if the producers say, "I hate English horn," you never use it again.
Right. I have to tell you something funny. My friend Dan Davila said, I have to start watching more soap operas. This is an amazing song, he said.
Well, I'll tell you, when we first started on the show, we were doing more of this sort of blue note jazz, mostly instrumental, not so much vocals, but they still do get occasionally featured with vocals. In fact, in that episode, we have Donna Byrne, and I don't know if you would know Donna from back east or not, Marshall Wood's wife, and she's a great singer, but she has that really great vintage sound. So there were a couple tunes that were co-writes with either myself or with Jeff Megan. And, you know, what I can do is let me give you this one thing. This is the playlist that CBS actually put up for us, that they were really super positive about what was happening on this episode. And they went the extra distance to, put this playlist together, which I'm struggling to get over here. Unfortunately, the link to I Am Love was not hyperlinked on the thing that they put up there. But what you'll see if you look at this thing, not only are all the tunes there, including score, so that's the entire playlist for the entire show, but at the very end, you'll notice that there's sheet music. Here I am, hawking the sheet music. But since, I have professional musicians that needed to read and needed to be prepared, I prepped all the sheet music, so it was not a big deal for me just to create PDFs. And you can self-publish on this Sheet Music Plus. So at the very bottom of that listing there, you'll find the link to the sheet music, which is basically a search for Brad Hatfield on Sheet Music Plus. But that brings you to those tunes, as well as some other things that I've done for the show. There's a character that plays piano. She's a classical player. I mean, I know we're running out of time, so maybe I can't share all these things. But one of my challenges is when I've got characters that actually have to play, there's a back and forth with those characters, so they're prepped. And whether they're allowed to have sheet music on the piano while they're playing along with what it is to be my track, she's a capable player. She's very good. But sometimes I have to prep all that stuff, and I have to do it in ways that, allow them to do the job. I have to send in script pages with, marked up with what sound file goes with one line of dialogue. And it's a wild process. I have to give huge props to the folks that make Gay and I and Rick Chrisman and Gary Kuo and RC is always going to make himself look good because he's the music supervisor and lead composer, and Mike Dobson, who's the other music supervisor. These folks are so great at communicating with us and telling us what they need, because they're answering to a whole hierarchy of folks above them that ending up ultimately at the network. And the show's been running for like 48 years, and that's pretty crazy. So they've been renewed to get to 50. I'm hoping that we do it. But when we first got started, it was more Blue Note jazz, and then a new producer came in and said, then he said, okay, for this one venue, more smooth jazz, and that was like a tune that I thought maybe if we wanted, we can sort of
definitely. And just Nalini, hi Nalini. She's been listening to your music on YouTube during the interview. Beautiful. And also, I guess she has your link, get to know your instructor, music supervision instructor, Brad Hatfield. Yeah. I'm interested to look at that. I think that's interesting. And also Dan Davila, he found you on Amazon for purchase, A Life Well Lived.
Yay. 1 penny at a time, baby. Hey, this is the other thing too, Cathy. We all struggle with how, as professional musicians, you're earning your money, and there's sometimes that dichotomy. Do I do something that's non-musical to pay the bills so I can, do my musical habit? Yeah. I don't want to use the word snob, but I'm going to be one of those people that's like, I'm only going to do this. And you know what? That's totally cool. Comes at other risks, personal, financial, relationship-wise. Yeah. So how do you balance all these things? And, this is just a couple of good old Ohio boys that would mowed lawns and for their piano teacher. And, with my jazz piano teacher, it was emptying the Ripple bottles quietly in the back of Van's music sales. So, that was, I bartered for my piano lessons. But, I'm in this place now where I'm earning money in ways that can support, I used to say, now I can afford to play jazz, right? But, this project, it was several grand for me to get all the live players in there. And of course, there's time that I can't bill for because there's no place for it. But the bottom line is that I'm okay, and if I can sell a couple of things, and some people stream some stuff, and all that stuff went kind of crazy stream wise, for us, then that's great. And the other thing that I'm really excited about is to be able to put Tavana's name on there, or I'm getting verklempt. This is like my 4th time, or Christine, or Lydia, and move things forward for them. And Bob Bowlby, just great saxophone playing, and if you check out the other tunes, you'll hear a lot more from Bob. I had to keep him on the melody on this particular thing. But Alan Hall just did great, with the drums. And so I was really blessed to have all these people on board. So, if people buy stuff, that does help. It does help.
Yeah. Okay, so first you want to play something, one more thing, right? Then we can come back and just say goodbye. And and I'll thank you then, and I'll do all my thank yous at that point.
All right. So what you're going to hear, this is one of Gay's tunes, a smooth jazz thing.
Can you send me the link and I'll do it?
Well, I'm playing it live.
Oh, okay, great.
We're doing it
Playing live, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So you're going to get the back of my head in a second here. And
Brad Hatfield coming to you from West Palm Beach.
Vero Beach. All right.
Beach.
This is actually okay. I'm inverted here a little bit, so that it might be confusing for me to actually look at that. But this tune is called Simply Stevie Smooth. So this is one of these tunes. Gabe wrote this, and I produced it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play top line. So we always deliver backing tracks, so they can dip things down to something that's just the backing track. But I'm going to have a little fun, and I'm not going to play the whole tune. I'll just play a little bit. Maybe I should. I gotta give you the melody at the very least.
Yeah.
Let me make sure that. All right. So we'll see how my mix is. I might be sort of adjusting on the fly, and let's see, what measure do I want to start with? Let's actually go from the top, and then I can vamp a little bit. Something like that.
That's a really nice song.
It is. It's a nice, happy tune, and it's got a little of that Stevie Wonder descending chord pattern thing, that's kind of fun. But once again, when we're doing these things, it's about kind of keeping things smooth enough that it'll live underneath dialogue, but also, I have multiple versions of this with different lead instruments and whatever. So if the executive producer says I'm done with the electric piano, then they've got a different version. But these are fun. There's enough integrity in what's in there, but we keep it simple enough that it works for their purposes. So anyway, thank you, honey. Thank you, honey, for writing that.
Louise Koopman said, "Oh my God, love the sound. Yum, you got the smooth coils in your DNA."
Well, it's so funny, when they went from the old school jazz to more smooth jazz, I said, well, it's still in my lifetime here. So that's still in the, the ballpark of stuff that we're comfortable doing,
That's really nice. Yeah, it's nice to hear you play it. It's beautiful. It's very clean, and there's space and your groove and the notes you pick and everything. It's just really nice.
I was probably overplaying more than I normally should, but I was just, I was having a little too much fun there. But
No, jazz police are coming.
yeah, right, dude. Calm down. Or our favorite line that somebody says to you at the end of the gig, "Hey, man, I heard what you were trying to do."
Ow. Oh my God.
Good effort.
Oh God. Well, first, if you don't mind, I'm just going to squeeze in like just 1 minute of what's coming.
Yeah.
So tomorrow I have people in LA know this person, Alan Walker. He's a he's a kind of a raconteur. He's a sax player and sometimes he sings too, but he's got a lot of history. He's from Roanoke, Virginia, and he just came up in the R&B time. He's really an interesting, cool guy. So that's tomorrow. That's live, and then Thursday through Sunday I have my archives, which you'll be part of down the line. By the way, you're number 303, just so you know.
Damn, that's kind of about like how old I feel.
You're still younger than me, and don't forget it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so then Thursday is two jazz people from New York, Andrea Wolper, great singer, and Ken Filiano.
Oh, Ken, I played with Ken, great bass player from the old Moon Unit days. So say hello to Ken for me.
Yeah. And then Friday, me.
Yay!
Saturday, Les DeMerle, who also lives in Florida.
Okay.
The drummer, Les DeMerle. He's
Yeah.
kind of almost like a Buddy Rich guy, except
Right.
in his day, he was really kind of famous almost for breaking out of the mold into fusion.
Uh-huh.
Very, very strong guy. And then Sunday, a really gorgeous, yummy singer and violinist who's a dear friend of mine, Calabria Foti. I don't know if you know her or her husband, Bob McChesney, trombone player.
Oh, sounds familiar.
Really good writers and arrangers. Oh, I mean, kind of orchestral stuff and just beautiful. She has a beautiful, beautiful sound. And next week we're going to have a Brazil, like live. We'll have Filo Machado and his grandson Felipe. I won't even say all I think about them, but they're absolutely incredible Brazilian guitarists and singers. Then Mike Campbell, who is a singer and guitarist and who taught at Musicians Institute for a long time. And a singer, you might know her. She's lives in Toronto now, but she's from South Africa, Nikki Schreier.
I don't know
her.
But
Anyway, that's just a little taste. But if people want to know who's coming, they can go on my website. And also for those of you living in LA, I'm actually doing a gig on Saturday that you can come to. Brad, if you were here visiting your son, you can come and sit in. It's going to be at the conference room in Playa Vista, 6:30 to 9:30. Call and make a reservation. Great band this week. We're going to have Bob Bowman and Pat Coyle, who are coming in from out of town.
Yeah.
I just happened to be here, and I said, "Hey, want to do my gig?" And it's a jam session too, believe it or not.
wow, good for you.
People are coming out and jamming, and it's outdoors. It's really it's a beautiful scene. So now I get to say thank you so much. It was so cool hanging out with you for 2 hours.
Well, likewise, Cathy. I mean, this goes way, way back. So it's it's great that the lines keep going forward and new stuff gets on them, along the way. So it's great.
Yeah, it's so nice. And please send my love to Gay, although I did say hello on when she said hi. But do send my love to Gay and enjoy Florida and get out of the house a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I got to put my fingers down to the plastics a little more often. It's going to happen. I mean, it's unbelievable how I'm also starting a catalog right now for music for licensing music. So this is a thing that's occupying a fair amount of my time. But I'm trying to do the right thing by folks in terms of representing their music and giving them a chance to get stuff licensed into film and TV and. Of course, the integrity of the music is going to be way up, but I also want to make sure that these folks have some other stuff that comes from that, which is kind of one of my big goals. So that's taken up a lot of my time right now. But, Gay keeps nudging, and we do have a keyboard set up out in the living room. And we did jam the other night with Alan Hewitt. So if you don't know who Alan Hewitt, you can look him up. He played with Earth, Wind and Fire and a bunch of different folks, but he's with the Moody Blues folks, now. But anyway.
Well, have a great evening, and my heart goes out to you. It's just great to hook up with you, and thanks again for the time, because I know your time is valuable.
Well, we appreciate it, and folks, yeah, man, if you're curious about the jazz on the daytime shows, man, it's still kind of happening in there, along with everything else. But just happy to be able to tell the story, and I can't thank you enough for asking me. I mean, it's a huge honor considering the 302 people that preceded me. It's like, holy crap, okay, So happy to be part of the club.
Okay,
right.
thanks,
Love you.
darling. Love you
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.